This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we take a look at some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning. We also take a look at some of the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 22nd of September 2021, and I am AX.
I am Miss Pope.
And I am CS. In the headlines, in case you missed them, Daily Nation, Carone spills bins on Adi cartels. In the Standard, untold deep state factor in polls. In the Star, why Raila RUTO may sign MOU with Mount Kenya. And in the People Daily, MPs start process to cut fuel prices. Ms. Pope, what's happening in the lands docket?
So today the Daily Nation told us that the CS for Lands has spilled the beans on earthy cartels. Historically, land has been an emotive issue. Many have perished at the hands of land cartels. It's no wonder that many before Uhuru Kenyatta fought the digitalization of land records. This is because there will be some big losers once the current paper system is removed, including our favorite chicken farmer. Let me explain. Since 1895, Kenya has operated manually in matters land records. But now we are going digital. So far, the Nairobi, Trans Nzoia, and Lamu registries are fully digitized and operational. It is called Sasa. This system enhances the security of land records. It also improves accessibility and cuts down the cost of land transactions. Since the system was launched, the ministry has processed close to 4,000 title deeds and leases. In Nairobi alone, 538 title deeds and 1,500 leases have been processed. These reforms will work together to thwart the effort of land grabbers and cartels. And speaking of land grabbers and cartel, I can't help but think about the chief of the hustler nation. The wolf in sheep's clothing. Sasa will punish cartels like him and expose their thievery.
Amen.
Hear me out. Just the other day, CS Matiang'i laid bare Mr. Ruto's land wealth. The chief hustler has over 18,400 acres of land.
Whoa.
How could he have accumulated over 18,000 acres in 8 years? Well, assuming he accumulated the 18,400 acres in the last 8 years, it means that since 2013, he has acquired 2,300 acres every year, which translates to more than 6 acres every day. Now, good people, who acquires 6 acres of land every single day?
Exactly.
Not even top companies and industries, for sure. His largest parcel of land is around 15,000 acres, which was allegedly grabbed. He was accused of grabbing the Kenya Airport Authority land where Weston Hotel sits. He was charged and convicted of grabbing Adrian Muteshi's 100 acres. The list goes on and on and on.
It does.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, who do you think the biggest loser will be from the new land information management system? Swali tu.
Kweli kweli, tumetoka analog, tumeenda digital.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now we have a 3-part criteria that we use to judge our headlines. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Is the headline topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, thoughtful or just plain lazy? Keep that in mind as we proceed. AX, deep state.
Deep state indeed. So, as we know, Nyandarua Governor Francis Kimemia recently asserted that the deep state manipulates Kenyan elections. According to Kimemia, the deep state is the proverbial boogeyman in the fairy tale of political ambition. It has its tentacles everywhere, getting everyone to do its bidding. And if it wants you to win, you will win. But the media would have you believe that it is responsible for all the bad things in our society. Maybe it is even the reason why you didn't stick to your diet, why you didn't get that promotion, and why there was traffic this morning. And while Kimemia was magnanimous enough to limit the deep state's power, he also failed to properly contextualize its role in politics. So allow me to do so today. The deep state exists, but it is not inherently conspiratorial. From my vantage point, the deep state performs 2 democratic functions. First, to support the re-election of the incumbent, and second, to act as the rudder of government, the one constant in a sea of here today, gone tomorrow politicians, entrusted to protect the Kenyan state and the Kenyan dream. This is often the primary function of the deep state. It does not exist to rig elections, not just that alone. But what does this mean? This means the deep state doesn't look like the cabal it's often thought of as. Sometimes the deep state can be the civil service, as in the United Kingdom. This is a fact Kimemia, as the former head of public service, should be aware of. Alternatively, the deep state could be the Electoral College, as in the United States. And both of these institutions are defining elements of their democracies and are legitimized by the same. In essence, what I am saying is that sometimes the deep state is just the state, just another tool of the state to maximize the good it can do, either by acting as a check and balance to power or ensuring continuity between administrations. This is the deep state left unreflected in Kimemia's interview, and the one we should all familiarize ourselves with. Finally, we must also ask ourselves who will be the best custodian of the deep state. A man concerned with the accumulation of personal wealth, as Ms. Pope has so deftly demonstrated, or a man interested in building bridges? I'll leave that to you guys. Yes.
I'd also like to talk about the deep state. As AX has mentioned, yesterday Governor Kimemia, who held various powerful dockets under the Kibaki administration, was asked during a morning interview whether the deep state exists. How he initiated his response is insightful. He highlighted that the deep state is predicated on the existence of the state. One is an inevitable function of the other. The only question is, what kind of deep state will you have? The challenge with both the term deep state and the idea of it is that it is both amorphous and elastic. It is like the invisible hand in economics.
Yes.
It is easy to misunderstand it, easy to misuse and misapply the term, and even manipulate it. Trump misused the idea of the deep state to rally the masses, to gain sympathy, and to divert attention from his failures and lies.
Yes.
RUTO has done the exact same thing many times. But in its proper context, deep state exists to safeguard those elements of the state that cannot and should not be exposed or subjected to the vicissitudes and uncertainties of democracy. Professor Mutai Ngugi has told us before that the masses are like a pendulum. One day they swing this way, the next day that way, and then back again, ad infinitum.
Yes.
The state, however, needs stability in order for it to survive and even to thrive. Otherwise, Leviathan would be ungovernable. It is why, for example, Professor Mutai Ngugi has also told us before that the military is the custodian of the Constitution. The people write the Constitution, but it is the military who underwrite the Constitution. The point is, there are those components of the state that are purposefully designed to guarantee and ensure the continuity and stability of the state, and especially a state like Kenya, which is an anchor state.
Yes.
Kenya being an anchor state means that if Kenya collapses, then every country in East and Central Africa collapses. And the ripple effects would be felt across the entire subcontinent and consequently also by our global partners. That is why Governor Kimemia also emphasized that the international community has a key role to play. They are stakeholders. This is a fact, and it is not just unique to Kenya.
But we are forgetting also the international angle. This country has a lot of interests from the international, and they also influence a lot. I can assure you from where I sat, they influence a lot.
How so?
In many ways that I can't discuss here, but many ways.
Part of the problem is that we are given to thinking that democracies are only about our elected representatives, and yet there's so much more that goes into keeping Kenya as a viable going concern. Part of the duty of the invisible hand of the state is sometimes to ensure that the very people that masses may be intoxicated with in a moment do not end up jeopardizing their viability of Kenya as a going concern, as well as jeopardizing the mutual interests of our regional and international partners. The deep state exists for the people, despite the people.
Ooh, yes.
We'll conclude with this. It is both necessary and responsible to have a competent and monopolistic deep state. If you do not, that space will be occupied by multiple forces beyond your control, because power abhors a vacuum. And those forces will also have their own interests. This is how Obama was succeeded by Trump, because the Russian deep state noticed a gap in the digital competence of the American deep state. The Russians exploited it. If democracy was all it was cut out to be, then why were the Americans, who are the biggest exporters of democracy, momentarily outmaneuvered by the Russians, who interfered in the US elections and put their person in the Oval Office? But the story doesn't end there. The reason Trump was only a one-term president is also because of the deep state. Even before Trump was inaugurated, the American deep state had already started working on reasserting their dominance. One of Obama's last acts in office at the end of December 2016 was to kick out Russian spies and diplomats in the US who are involved in election hacking. Fact. What is the moral of the story? If you do not have a competent and monopolistic deep state, then one will be provided for you. Walivonena wahenga wa kizazi kipya, usipojipanga, utapangwa.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, just to quickly repeat the headlines. Daily Nation, Caronet spills the beans on Adi cartels. In the Standard, untold deep state factor in polls. In the Star, why Raila Ruto may sign MOU with Mount Kenya. And in the People Daily, MPs start process to cut fuel prices. Now, I think both AX and I were inspired by the Standard. And Ms. Pope went with the Daily Nation. Who would we want to give the winning headlines today? I think I've already revealed my bias for the Daily Nation.
I think we should give it to the Daily Nation, yes. Madam CS has done a good job. Digitalization of the system brings transparency, accessibility, cutting down of costs. I mean, the Daily Nation should be our winning headline.
Yes, indeed. What's being done with lands will really inject a lot into the economy, because a lot of people will be able to use those titles to go to banks, and a lot of money will be pumped into our economy. And with that, you have economic acceleration. People also have restoration of dignity. It ties in with Uhuru's 4-point legacy framework. And here at the Fort Hall School of Government, we really would like to commend CS Farida Karone for the excellent work she's been doing. So I think with that,
we toss the
others and give it to the Daily Nation. And now for our final thought. It is inspired by the book Deception by Edward Lucas.
Yes, indeed. So as CS has said, today we are talking about Edward Lucas's book, Deception, Spies, Lies, and How Russia Dupes the West. Written in 2013, Deception begins by documenting the horrifying fate of Sergei Magnitsky. Magnitsky was a Russian lawyer defending a British investment firm against trumped-up tax evasion charges. In the process, he discovered how Russia's powerful stole $230 million from their government. And Lucas alleges that the thieves were backed by Russia's FBI equivalent, the FSB, and that the plot was, and I quote, backed at the highest level in the regime, end quote. Now, you can only imagine what happened to Magnitsky, and I will not go through it right now. But in summary, he was beaten, tortured, and he finally died alone in his cell from his injuries. What Magnitsky went through exposes the harsh realities of power in Russia. Power in Russia is amoral, cynical, exploitative, and above all, Machiavellian. This reality has not changed, remaining constant through Tsars, premiers, presidents, and of course, Vladimir Putin. And it certainly has not changed after prolonged contact to and experience with the openness of Western societies. In fact, Lucas argues that rather than Russia changing to become more open, everyone else is becoming more Russian. That is to say, they are becoming more amoral, more cynical, more Machiavellian. It seems the West forgot that influence is a two-way street. And Russia has been able to achieve these changes through its spies, each one deep undercover, slowly changing the hearts and minds of the right influential people. After all, it is easier to move a mountain pebble by pebble rather than all at once. Now, although this sounds like the plot of a movie, Lucas warns the West not to suspend its disbelief. Lucas reminds his Western audience that the Russians are far better spies than the West's own spies. For proof, one need only look at how successfully and consistently the Russians were able to infiltrate Western governments in the Cold War, while the Western spies failed to get so much as a toe through the door. And for Lucas, the West's failure to recognize this Russian expertise will spell its doom. And perhaps it already has.
Interesting. So picking up from what you've said, I will recount the story of Anna Chapman. So the author describes her as the best known spy of the new generation of Russian spies, though she came to the radar of spy catchers quite late.
Ooh.
Her story captures the nationalist pride that Russia holds in its spies. As a spy, Anna thrived in being ordinary. However, her ordinariness was deceiving. And recognized, she spied on Western countries such as Britain and the US. She was, however, arrested in the United States in June 2010 as part of the illegal program Spy Ring. Fortunately, because of the 2010 Russia-US prisoner swap, she was deported back to Russia. And unlike most spies who retire quietly into the shadows once they are exposed, Anna metamorphosized to become Russia's leading political symbol and a television celebrity. The author tells how she became an intimate friend of Putin and one of his prized political assets. The author basically highlights 3 reasons why Russian spies are the most superior and of all, and they do such a good job. And the first is this, determination. They understand the game and they fully engage.
Yeah.
The second is playing the long game. And in playing the long game, the Russians are willing to spend large amounts of time and money building up long-term assets. And the third reason is the Russian skill and ability to mount deception operations. So the author concludes the book by stating that the rules of the game have never changed. Russians are still using their old techniques and deception, old techniques of deception and subversion, but only using them better. Indeed, the new generation of spies continues to penetrate the West.
Now, it is opportune that we're delving into a text about espionage, and I've just come from briefly dissecting how Russian spies were used to influence the US elections. This book has a lot of piercing insights, including how pop culture has influenced and misinformed the public's perception of spies. So, in helping the reader separate fact from fiction, the author begins by contextualizing what espionage essentially entails. Spies break rules for governments that try to enforce them. In this contradiction lies the fascination of the espionage world and also its greatest weakness. Espionage involves breaking laws, perhaps of your own country, more often of its allies, and certainly in the country being spied upon. The reason is simple. Secret information may come through deduction and inference, or from exploiting the other side's carelessness and by bluff and subterfuge. But the blunt fact is that for the most part, secrets must be stolen. This means instigating treachery. That is a long way from the normal task expected of a public servant. It attracts a certain kind of person, often flawed or troubled, and shapes them to its needs, to the point that deceit arouses not repugnance, but professional curiosity and admiration. Therefore, it is necessary to understand the mentality, training, and selection of the soldiers. The author tells us that the first quality of a good spy is to shun and shed the social norms that hamper deceiving, cheating, and manipulating people. For example, an early exercise during the 6-month intelligence officer's new entry course at Britain's Fort Monckton Spy School in England is to gain as much personal information as possible from people in a pub. A prize goes to anyone who obtains passport details. The second is to borrow money from strangers. Some well-brought-up trainees find this so demeaning that they quit. Other agencies use similar training games. Israel's Mossad sets recruits the task of gaining entry into a stranger's apartment and appearing on the balcony drinking a glass of water.
What?
Watchers in a car park below, see who succeed. Spying is a job for the nosy and devious, not the shy and the scrupulous. If moral ambiguity is part of the lure, another element is the glamour of secrecy. Nobody cares how and where the government trains its tax inspectors, but the location and topography of Fort Monckton, the names of the courses, and their content are secrets. Outsiders catch only fleeting glimpses of life in the shadows, usually in carefully sanitized form. Secrecy and flawed fictional depictions fuel the misperceptions we have. Real intelligence officers, as professional employees of the state, spies hate standing out in a crowd. Their job is to go unnoticed from A to B to perform task C and return. Real spies are not as suave and serenading as Sean Connery.
Yeah.
In reality, they can be as nondescript as Pyongo in IT. Moreover, a few intelligence officers steal secrets directly.
Yeah.
It is too hard to get the right access and too risky to exploit it when gained. Their main role is recruiting others to do the dirty work. Here is where the real talent kicks in. Successful spies tend to be good at dealing with people, unobtrusively, imaginatively, and persuasively. They could easily be executive coaches, psychotherapists, salesmen, confidence strictures, or scraping the barrel journalists. Their job is to extract information and consent by concocting and administering the right cocktail of pressure, ideology, flattery, and money.
Interesting.
This has been the Fifth Estate winning headlines, and on a day when we had a winning headline from the Daily Nation and a book titled Deception. Kindly do remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on your TV screens. Find us on Pang Free to Air, Go TV, and Star Times. We'll leave you with this quote by John F. Kennedy Jr. Too often we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought.
Great words.